Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. It's February 3rd, and we are about to embark upon our third of four stakeholder input meetings, listening sessions for the Cumulative Impacts Public Involvement Process. I'd like to excuse Chair Robbins today, as well as Director Murphy. They were unable to attend this meeting, though they've been able to attend the others, and they'll have an opportunity to go back and listen to this one as well. Thank you for joining us today. Very much looking forward to hearing your thoughts. I do have a couple of words to kick us off here, and wanted to recognize that we do have Commissioner Messner, Commissioner McGowan, Commissioner Cross, and myself here, and we have some other folks that we will introduce you here in just a second. I wanted to thank you for your participation today and for your preparation in advance for the meeting today. And you might recall that the cumulative impacts issue was discussed during our mission change rulemaking. And while several regulations were implemented at that time that intended to reduce the cumulative impact of oil and gas development, the Commission committed to take a more focused look at cumulative impacts in the future. And we also received a petition, and we heard it this past December, on cumulative impacts. And that petition largely focused on air quality and specifically ozone precursor emissions. And we committed to, at that time, to conduct a broader stakeholder outreach process beginning the first part of this year. And so that's what we've embarked upon here. I think most of you know that COGCC is the agency charged with managing oil and gas in Colorado. And I believe that many of you are likely familiar with the commissioners and COGCC staff. But I do want to take a moment to introduce the other faces that we have on our panel here today. And so we'll start with Aaron Ray, if you would, please.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Ray. I'm the new Assistant Director for Energy Innovation at the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. I come to DNR from the National Conference of State Legislatures, where I led NCSL's energy program, and I previously served as Deputy Director for Policy in the Colorado Governor's Office. I appreciate being included in this listening session and look forward to hearing your views. Thank you.
Thank you, and we look forward to having you on here. Thank you so much for joining us. We also have some representatives from CDPHE here with us. And so if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves as well, Natalie.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Natalie Eddy. I'm the Deputy Director for Policy with Environmental Health and Protection at CDPHE. Happy Friday, folks.
Thank you, and thrilled to have you here with us. And Kate.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Kate Fury. I'm the Air Quality Oil and Gas Liaison at the Air Pollution Control Division. I lead coordination between COGCC staff and division staff. And then I'm also the main point of contact for stakeholders that have interest in air quality and oil and gas operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And we've asked these folks to sit on the panel with us so that we can all listen together to the comments that are presented here today. The panelists that are here are generally here just to listen, but we may ask you for some points of clarification related to your testimony. We do have a number of people signed up today, 33 from what I can tell. And so we will move through relatively expeditiously. I wanted to remind everyone that this meeting is specifically to introduce cumulative impacts topics that you'd like the Commission to consider during its cumulative impact stakeholder process. And if you'd like to comment on a specific OGDP or CAP or other issue, it would be more appropriate and helpful if your comment is given during that appropriate hearing or on that issue on our website. However, if you believe the points you're raising are helpful to the cumulative impacts process, then we're certainly willing to listen to you here as well. The issues that will be considered during the cumulative impacts process are those issues that are within COGCC's purview and mission, and that are consistent with Senate Bill 181, and that are reasonably actionable in the end. It's not the intent of these meetings to debate or discuss or argue for or refute the merits of any issues that are raised, but rather simply to ensure that there's an avenue to raise and describe those issues that are important to you for inclusion in the discussion, along with any substance around those issues that you'd like to provide. Each person will be given roughly 3 minutes for their principal presentation, and wanted to remind everybody that we do record these meetings, and we will have these recordings available for future listening. I would also ask everybody to please be respectful. Personal attacks of others or allegations of negligence or malfeasance on the part of staff or other people are not appropriate, nor are they effective in getting issues included into this process. And as such, I'd like to respectfully ask you to refrain from these types of statements, as well as refrain from addressing debating or refuting points raised by the other commenters at this time. The time to debate the issues in their substance will come in, a little later on. At the end of each public comment, panelists will have an opportunity to ask any clarifying points or questions they might have about your presentation. So that said, we are ready to jump in, and if we can elevate, and hopefully I'll get this name right, Mindy Okier from the City and County of Broomfield to kick us off.
I'm not finding Mindy Oker at this moment.
Okay, we'll flag that and we'll try to come back to her.
Yes.
If Miss Okier, if you're here, if you could raise your hand, that helps us locate you. Otherwise, we could kick off with Mr. Kirby Wynn, if he's on, from the Garfield County and Western and Rural Local Government Coalition.
Hi there. There was some confusion. I'm going to be giving comment on Monday.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you being here, Mr. Wynn. We will verify that you were here on Monday as well. If Ms. Amaro, if you can take a look and just verify that we've got him properly signed up on Monday. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Wynn. Look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah,
He is signed up for Monday, Mr.
Wonderful. We do have you signed up on Monday. Thank you, Mr. Wynn, for being here. Let's go to Ms. Susan Noble from Commerce City Council. Ms. Noble,
Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon, commissioners and other members of the government who are with us today. My name, as you said, is Susan Noble. Although I am a city council member of Commerce City, I am speaking as an individual today. I would like to say that I am as up to date as you are on cumulative impacts, but I would note for the record that it doesn't seem to be having a considerable effect on projects that the COGCC is approving. And that includes projects such as the scale of the Aurora oil and gas activity. Some time ago in 2019, there was discussion of cumulative impacts, and I recall appearing before the city council at that time when I was the founder of North Range Concerned Citizens and its then chair. And it was noted that cumulative impacts could be determined by cities, although our outside legal counsel was suggesting that the city council needed to wait on the action of the COGCC. Needless to say, in the interim, which is nearly 4 years now, there have been innumerable sites that have been approved, let alone more oil and gas activity. We find cumulative areas such as E470, which has now become what many are calling a frack highway. Used to be a frack highway in the Hudson area in Weld County, where there were oil and gas sites, one after another. Now you see it on E470. The difference is that Weld County is farmland, while on E470, it's surrounded on both sides by houses. And that's where we get to the real nit of this issue, is that I look upon it as propensity, density, and proximity as the issues that you need to take into account when you are determining whether an oil and gas site can be drilled. That's the issue, and that's what's having an impact. That is, of course, along with the other language that the EPA or the federal government already has with past, present, and foreseeable future. I do hope that you make it even stronger. Cumulative impacts was one of the most important issues that was to come before this body in order to make a rulemaking regarding it. And we need more done in order for our air, our water, and our quality of life to be protected. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you, Ms. Noble. We really appreciate you being here and appreciate your comments and appreciate your service as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and yours as well.
Okay, if we could next hear from Ms. Catherine Goff from the North Glen City Council. Hello, Ms. Goff. We can, now we can see you as well and hear you. So you The floor is yours. Thank you so much for being here today. Oh, you are still muted though, Ms. Goff.
So sorry about that. Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Goff, and I am a North Glen City Council member. I thank you for the opportunity to comment on the oil and gas cumulative impact stakeholder process. North Glen is a community of 38,000 people and covers just under 8 square miles. We are small enough to be affected by what happens in nearby communities. We are concerned about the impacts that oil and gas extraction might have on our quality of life. I-25, Washington Boulevard, 120th Avenue, and 104th Avenue are major roads that go through North Glen. We have seen an increase in truck traffic and have had residents complain about it. I hope this study will recommend that operator truck traffic should be prohibited during peak traffic hours and the routes should only allow right turns. If possible, there should be a creation of haul roads to reduce potential for accidents on busy roads. Because leaks and spills are not rare, older infrastructure needs to be monitored through time with soil sampling, infrared imaging, and AQ monitors. While this oil and gas extraction does not occur in North Glen, many routes into our community pass by oil and gas infrastructure. Scenic landscape value is destroyed by infrastructure such as ECD towers on pads and pigging scattered alongside open space and recreational areas. I see examples of this on my way to shop at Costco. Senate Bill 19-181, the bill to protect public welfare in oil and gas operations, became law more than 3 years ago. While I appreciate that the Commission has made progress in complying with the law's cumulative impact directives, the efforts are not addressing the urgency of implementing the intent of the bill, which is addressing the climate crisis and the ozone crisis facing Metro Denver and the North Front Range. I urge the COGCC to move forward quickly with the rulemaking so to ensure permit conditions that prevent further harm by oil and gas development. Disproportionately impacted communities have borne the brunt of ozone and other climate change effects long enough. We need rules that not only direct a thorough and comprehensive analysis of cumulative impacts from oil and gas, but absolutely create policies to address these impacts. Further, it's important that the rules establish a single, clear state definition of cumulative impacts. EPA has definitions that Colorado could adopt. This would help to ensure consistency in cross-agency considerations. I also encourage you to provide clear criteria that operators must follow in conducting cumulative impacts analyses, including identification of baseline values for each impact evaluated. North Glen has no way to monitor sites that sit outside our borders, but we know we can be affected by them. We are counting on you to protect us. Thank you for your time and attention to this vitally important process.
And thank you, Ms. Goff. We really appreciate you being here and appreciate your comments and your service to the citizens of North Glen. Thank you for being here today. Okay, next on our list is Mr. John Jenkins from the Stonewall Fire Protection District.
Mr. Jenkins is not in the meeting at this moment. Mr. Ackerman?
Okay, thank you so much. We'll pass by and see if we can circle back. Next, Erica Thorley from the Erie Board of Trustees. Okay, Ms. Thorley, we can see you and it looks like we will be able to hear you. The floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Fantastic. I just want to make a clarifying point here. So I'm not part of the Board of Trustees. I'm actually the Sustainability Manager for the town of Erie. So good afternoon, commissioners, members. Thank you for allowing me the chance to come and speak with you all today. My name is Erica Thorley. I am the Sustainability Manager for the town of Erie. And I appreciate the opportunity to comment on the oil and gas cumulative impact stakeholder process. The town of Erie residents and many other communities of Colorado are directly impacted by oil and gas operations. These impacts include health, well-being, and the environment. Erie alone has 90 producing wells within our municipal boundary, 42 active but not currently producing wells, 219 plugged and abandoned wells, and many more wells within 2,000 feet of our town boundary. In 2021, the town of Erie installed air quality open monitoring stations. Since their installation, 27 instances of methane concentrations over 2,000 ppbs and 6 instances of benzene over 5 ppbs have occurred. Other recorded events have captured elevated concentrations of volatile organic compounds, including 4 events where 1-hour benzene surpassed CDPHE's health guideline value of 9 parts per billion. Because of the large impact on our community from oil and gas production, the town of Erie greatly appreciates that the COGCC adopt the cumulative impacts provisions of the mission change rulemaking following SB 19-181. It's of utmost importance that these rules not only continue building data through analysis, but also that the rules begin to address those evaluated impacts. Analysis is important, but what Coloradans need is implementation of measures that will reduce the impacts. It's important to evaluate impacts, but establishing exactly what to do about those impacts is even more important. The rules must address that. Given the complex challenge of identifying, measuring, and regulating cumulative impacts, we suggest that the COGCC quickly define cumulative impacts using previously established definitions, such as the Environmental Protection Agency's definition stating cumulative impacts as the totality of exposures to combinations of chemical and non-chemical stressors and their effect on health, well-being, and the quality of life outcomes, as well as their definition for cumulative impact assessment, which is the process of evaluating both quantitative and qualitative data representing cumulative impacts to inform a decision. In addition to defining these integral terms, we recommend that already effective and equipped regulatory agencies such as the CDPHE and EPA are included in any measurement efforts and enforcement, as well as local air quality monitoring resources, such as those that Erie supports. Finally, I want to mention that understanding and acting on the cumulative impacts of oil and gas operations in Colorado is immensely important, especially with regard to climate disruption, ozone pollution, and impacts on disproportionately impacted communities. The town of Erie encourages that the Commission adopt rules that direct a thorough and robust cumulative impacts analysis process to not just evaluate how permitted operations contribute to environmental and public health harms, but also, most importantly, to address what actions are needed to minimize those impacts. Thank you for your consideration of our request to take bold action on implementing strong rules that will reduce the cumulative impacts of oil and gas productions on our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thorley. We appreciate your comments and appreciate you being here. Okay, next we'll hear from Jean Lim from the City and County of Broomfield.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lim. Thank you. We can hear you. Oh, now we can see you. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, COGCC commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jean Lim, and I am a Broomfield City Council member. On behalf of the mayor and Broomfield City Council members, I have submitted written comments that I will briefly highlight here. As elected officials of the City and County of Broomfield, where our constituents have experienced the cumulative impacts of oil and gas firsthand, we write to you to share our adversities and to advocate for swiftly addressing cumulative impacts to protect public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. We appreciate the opportunity to participate in phase 1 of the stakeholder process for cumulative impact rulemaking, as required by SB 19-181. In Appendix A of our written comments, we have included a non-exhaustive list of 35 cumulative impacts of oil and gas operations. Where applicable, we have included links to public documentation of how these adverse impacts have occurred during oil and gas operations in the City and County of Broomfield during the past several years. One listed impact includes public health, where our residents reported over 500 health concerns between January 2020 and December 2021. The corresponding study was just published in the peer-reviewed journal, the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. Broomfield also has had wildlife impacts when on August 6, 2018, extractions activity in Broomfield open space destroyed burrowing owl habitat, resulting in Extraction Oil and Gas pleading no contest in violation of Broomfield Municipal Code, for which they paid only a $400 fine. Fires on oil and gas pads threaten the health and safety of those living near the pad. Broomfield examples include the November 9th, 2021 fire on Northwest A and the March 12th, 2022 fire on Interchange. Our community concern was exemplified when Civitas issued an apology immediately following the Marshall fire for a January 14th, 2022 smoke plume event. Please see our written comments for over 30 other cumulative impacts. We also believe that there are some general principles that should apply to the Commission's deliberations during rulemaking, and we have included those in our written comments. We welcome any questions on our general principles or on our list of cumulative impacts. We urge this Commission to promptly begin the rulemaking process to address the cumulative impacts of oil and gas operations. We appreciate your consideration of our experience and suggestions, and we invite you to read our written comments in detail. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, and thank you for submitting them in writing as well, and for your service to the people of Broomfield. I note that also Mindy Okier has joined the meeting, also from the City and County of Broomfield. It might be appropriate to hear from her now. Thank you for noting that, Ms. Amaro. If she's here, if we could elevate her. Okay, Ms. Okier, we can, it looks like you're on the screen. We don't see you, but it looks like you are impaneled. We'll give her one more moment to join. Did we lose her?
Can everyone hear me now?
Yep, we've got you now, and you do have your hand up, so when you get a second, you can put that back down, but we can hear you. Just
I apologize. I have major technical issues this morning, so or this afternoon, so forgive me. I appreciate being called on and you recircling back to me. I am listening in strictly today, so no formal comments at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Appreciate that. Okay, and then before we circle back, let's circle back to John Jenkins from the Stonewall Fire Protection District. Do we see him on here yet? I do not. Okay. Okay, next up then is Lois Vanderkoy. If we can bring her up. She will be followed by Leslie Weiss. Okay, Ms. Vanderkoy, we can now see you, and you are on mute, but the time is yours when you're ready. Oh, you are on mute still, Ms. Vanderkoy.
Sorry. Lois Vanderkoy, Broomfield, involved since 2017 when extraction oil and gas arrived at our doorstep. I'm afraid you're reminding me of how the Commission and our Republican council members and mayor acted back in 2017 before 181. Extraction basically threatened us with lawsuits and opposed protective measures that could decrease their profitability. Educated citizens pled for better protection. They were treated in patronizing or demeaning ways rather than with empathy and respect for facts and research. The industry, as usual, denied, minimized, projected bad and stupid onto activists, and rationalized. This continued as citizens went on to support City Charter Amendments 112 and passage of 181, overwhelmingly outspent by oil and gas interest. Your rulemaking so far appears heavily influenced by what industry is willing to do, rather than what would actually protect and minimize cumulative impacts. We've already given you plenty of input. These listening sessions seem organized to appease us and look good so that the industry can brag that Colorado has the strictest regulations in the world and produces the cleanest molecules of oil and gas. That doesn't fly with us who have experience and knowledge about real impacts. 3 steps you can take to address well-known cumulative health, water, air, soil, wildlife, and climate impacts. 1, it's no longer waste to leave oil and gas in the ground, and protection should be the overriding principle. Valid research has shown that major impacts to health and air quality occur within 1 kilometer up to 3 kilometers, or 1.86 miles. Buffer zones are feasible, reasonable, and the most effective measure of protection. Therefore, establish a 20 do not adequately protect, or at least stop deceiving the public that BMPs are substantially equivalent to 2,000 feet. 2, limit the amount of water used for fracking as it is needed for population growth and agriculture. and climate scientists predict ongoing aridification of the West, you could limit the number of permits granted and require reuse of produced water for further fracking. 3, infrastructure decays. Permit in a way that protects against impacts from old infrastructure and decreases density overall. For example, require PNA and reclamation of at least 2 wells per each well permitted, and of all unproductive wells in a spacing unit. This will place more responsibility on operators who have resources to develop new infrastructure. I'm frustrated with a state that operates in the name of a business as usual economy, while climate science tells us we quickly need to decrease greenhouse gases and ozone. We packed our bags with the Marshall Fire and had to stay inside and buy air filters with summer smoke and ozone. It's like that art depicting German leaders still debating global warming while water engulfs them. Thanks for listening.
And thank you, Ms. Vanderkoy. Appreciate you being here. And I do have a follow-up point of clarification for you as per your testimony. Thank you for testifying. Is it your testimony? It sounded to me that your testimony was that you find these us holding listening sessions to be patronizing and disrespectful, listening to the public. Is that correct?
Not so much disrespectful as kind of patronizing, because by now you should know the cumulative impacts, and to define the scope seems like repeating what we already know. And then when Ms. Merlin presented her petition for rulemaking, there was all this kickback from oil and gas, I understand, in terms of comments, written statements. And that to me shows that they're still ready to patronize and demean and dismiss.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony, Ms.
Yeah.
Vanderkoy. We appreciate you being here. And I remind everybody to, try to be careful about the assertions about the intentions of others. We do have differing points of view and differing opinions on this subject. So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It looks like Ms. Weiss and Mr. Katz are not yet in the meeting. So if either one of you are here, if you could please raise your hand, we'll make sure that we hear from you. Otherwise, if Ms. Julie Huygen is here, we'll elevate her to the panel. Ms. Huygen, maybe I'm probably saying that very wrong, but welcome. We can see you, and the time is yours.
Thank you, and congratulations. You got much closer than most do, Commissioner. It's Julie Huygen. Thank you for allowing me to make a public comment today. I'll begin by saying that I am an Air Force veteran and retiree, and my husband, who is also an Air Force veteran and retiree, we chose to retire here in Colorado. And we chose it for the reasons I'm sure that many people choose to live here who do not have the good fortune of being native to Colorado, which is largely because of the outdoor opportunities and resources that are available here. Since retiring in Colorado, in Aurora specifically, I have continued my public service. I serve as a county election judge. I serve on one of the Aurora City Commissions, and I also serve as a board member of one of our neighborhood Metro District boards. For that, in that light, and really in the capacity of sitting on the Metro District board, is how I came to be familiar with the project that is currently titled the Lowry Ranch CAP, which is a Civitas fracking project that proposes to place 174 new wells alongside the Aurora Reservoir, and to drill under 40,000 plus acres of eastern and southeastern Aurora. Those drills, of course, the drilling would of course take place under our neighborhoods, our schools, our homes, our churches, and of course the reservoir itself, which supplies water to the third largest city in Colorado, Aurora, the fastest growing city in Colorado, and also the most diverse city in Colorado. And with regard to the cumulative impacts and the rulemaking process that's taking place, I would add that understanding that cumulative impacts is a technical term, that we also all keep in mind for practical reasons, that it should also be cumulative and comprehensive impacts. And as I'm sure the commissioners that you bear in mind every day as you do your vital work for the citizens of Colorado, is that you are now charged to take as your directive under SB 181, the protection of public health, safety, welfare, environment, and wildlife. And to that end, I would point towards some of the discussion that is included not only in your report, but in all discussions of oil and gas proposed projects, which are, of course, air pollution, the consideration that with regard at least to the oil and gas operations in and around the city of Aurora, and frankly, all along the Front Range, that the Front Range is a non-attainment area and that we have been downgraded in air quality from serious to severe. And that the Colorado State Agency charged with monitoring air quality in Colorado cannot, or as yet has not come up with a plan to bring us into attainment. With regard to water, as your report of course points out, it's not just a consideration of water pollution and risk to water, but also a consideration of course to water use and noise. And so I would also point to noise as the factor that is part of your charge under SB 81 and is often overlooked as a consideration in the cumulative impact studies. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Ms. Hugan. Really appreciate your well-organized and thoughtful comments, and appreciate you being here with us today and your considerable public service. Next, we will hear from Jan Rose, followed by Roger Steen. Okay, Ms. Rose, looks like we can see you. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. Thank you, members of the commission and members of the CDPHE for attending today. I'm very disappointed to hear that neither the commission's director nor the staff director of the COGCC is here today with so many public comments, but I trust that they will listen to the recording. I submitted a written piece of testimony in December when the cumulative impacts petition was undergoing review, and so I will not belabor what I've previously said in writing, but I do want to point out one last time the acknowledgement of the COGCC as it relates to cumulative impacts by reading a sentence from the 2021 Cumulative Impacts Report. CIDR is solely a data collection tool for staff and commissioners and does not conduct the evaluation of cumulative impacts itself. Staff acknowledge that sometimes cumulative data, qualitative data is not sufficiently informative to begin to evaluate cumulative impacts. Commissioner Ackerman, I heard your comment at the end of the last listening session that the commission may choose to take no action at all as a result of these listening sessions. And I urge you to reconsider that as a possible outcome of this, not only because you yourselves have admitted that you are not evaluating cumulative impacts, but you're clearly hearing from the public that it's a critical issue. So I also want to ask for the inclusion in future cumulative impacts report of something somebody mentioned previously. So again, not going to belabor it, but there is no accounting for the vehicle miles traveled to and from all of these drilling sites around the state. And I'm going to just as an example, take the Lowry Ranch cap and what the operator proposed there. They indicated they're going to truck in approximately 24 million gallons of fresh water to drill and frack each of the 174 wells. So that's about 4,000 truck trips per well, which is nearly 700,000 tanker trucks kicking up dust and creating PM 2.5 and adding enormous emissions as they enter and exit each pad. VMTs have to be part of cumulative impacts. There's so much traffic going in. So I want to close with a reminder from what Director Murphy said. The report is intended to evolve as our data, understanding, and methods evaluate and address cumulative impacts and evolve. So we intend to accept a request for additional content for this report. You are hearing from the public that we are making those requests, and we certainly hope that you will implement them. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Ms. Rose. Thank you for being here for your testimony and for your previous testimony and written comments on this issue. I appreciate you highlighting that as well. Just one point of clarification from Ms. Rose's testimony for those who are listening, that the statement as to what COGCC will do with these listening sessions, I don't believe that we ever said that it's likely we'll take no action at all. I think what we said is we're not prejudging the path forward. It could include rulemaking, policy, forums, administrative procedures, and a number of other potential implementation vehicles. So thank you, Ms. Rose, for your testimony.
If I may, Commissioner Ackerman, you caused quite a lot of conversation in the communities in which I travel as a result of your closing statements at the last meeting. And we did clearly hear you state that one of the possible outcomes was to take no action.
Okay, thank you. I will go back and listen to that and make sure that I correct that if that's the case. Thank you, Ms. Rose. Okay, next on our list, we have Mr. Roger Steen, if Mr. Steen is here. Hello, Mr. Steen, can you hear us? Okay, we see you and hear you. You sure are, sir. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you. I am Roger Steen, and I'm with Western Colorado Alliance. I'm calling in from Routt County, which is Northwest Colorado. We will be submitting these comments in writing with greater explanation through your DNR website. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on scoping for cumulative impact analyses related to oil and gas development in Colorado. After review of Rule 904 and your 2021 Cumulative Impact Report, the immensity of this program begins to become evident, but also the importance of evaluating the impacts on which to make a go, no-go decision is very high. The public needs some estimation of both the positive and negative impacts. The cumulative impact assessment should be a useful tool and not just an academic study. Now, to accomplish this, we need a clear definition of the project in terms of currently and reasonably foreseeable development. Presumably, this is provided by the OGDP. Now, the environmental characteristics to be evaluated should include the following list, most of which were used in the 2021 Cumulative Impact Report. We have added a few more that are also important. First, greenhouse gas inventory. Secondly, water quality of the state waters. Thirdly, water quantity consumed. Fourth, air quality, and that would be the criteria, pollutants, toxins, with particular emphasis on the river valley multi-day inversion stagnation conditions that are common on the west slope. Noise and light, recreation related to health and welfare of the public, wildlife, those being habitat destruction, noxious weeds and the like, health of our native fish population, that's the aquatic part. Now, an impact analysis generally begins with a baseline for each characteristic and then evaluates the change from baseline for each. Then a judgment is made regarding acceptability of that change. The data used must reflect actual values rather than constructed data to avoid the problems currently experienced in the APCD's greenhouse gas intensity verification inventory program, where there is poor correlation of ground-up emission inventory data with top-down measurements. Regarding the cumulative impact assessment, impacts of toxins and criteria pollutants such as NOx are based on the same production data as the greenhouse gas inventory. So if the greenhouse gas inventory is not accurate, the cumulative impact gases will also be inaccurate. The need for accurate data is essential for the evaluation of a meaningful cumulative impact. We want a useful tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Very much appreciate that. Appreciate you being here today. I was reminded by Ms. Amaro to let everybody know that in the chat box, Ms. Hickam has typed the order of speakers. And so if you are wondering when you'll be up, take a look at the chat box. You should be able to see that. Thank you, Mr. Steen. Next, we have Deb Bjork. Hello, Ms. Bjork. We see you. The time is yours. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, give me 1 second to get set up here. Thank you.
You bet. We hear you just fine as well.
Thank you for this listening session. I'm Deb Bjork, a 32-year Colorado resident with asthma who's impacted by air pollution and contaminants leaking into our water and soil. The EPA downgraded Colorado's ozone non-attainment area to severe. Emissions from oil and gas operations are the primary source of ozone precursors and GHGs in the North Front Range, where I live. The EPA says low levels of ozone can cause health effects even in healthy people. Children whose lungs are still developing are at greatest risk. Those with asthma, older adults, and people who are active or work outdoors are at high risk. Colorado has 26,000 PFAS sites. 86% of them involve the oil and gas industry. Coloradoans who live close to oil and gas wells can have high PFAS exposure. A single serving of Colorado freshwater fish contains as much PFAS as you would consume in a month of drinking PFAS contaminated water. The health and safety of Colorado residents are at risk. Over 2,000 studies in PSR's compendium of risks and harms of fracking show irrefutable health impacts. We are in a 1,200-year drought, and yet the fracking industry is using our fresh water, which must be considered ever after unsafe. Each Niobrara well uses an average of 6.9 million gallons, some exceeding 25 million gallons. Where are operators getting this water? Where's the produced water stored or used? The state doesn't know. Leaks and spills containing air, water, and soil are frequent at oil and gas sites and pipelines, especially with old infrastructure. Nearly 800 wells on the state orphan well list, plus an additional 17,000 out of Colorado's 50,000 active wells, need to be plugged and reclaimed. Best management practices will not save us from the hundreds of thousands of tons of emissions allowed. Over 1,500 wells have been approved since January 2020 when mission change regulations were enacted. Each well adds tons of ozone precursors and new sources of greenhouse gases, even though our state is not on track to meet its ozone or greenhouse gas reduction targets. And now, per the Gonella CAP projections, an average of 100 tons per well per year of carbon dioxide is emitted. Is that correct? We can't breathe. We can't eat the fish from our lakes and streams. Our state has high levels of PFAS directly tied to oil and gas sites. We're suffering a 1,200-year drought, yet millions of gallons of water are used for fracking, taken forever out of the water cycle, and the climate emergency is on the verge of horrendous, irreversible tipping points. We need cumulative impacts rulemaking now. Please define cumulative impacts comprehensively. Use the EPA definition, require equity analysis, and define specific, measurable, firm standards limiting pollution in all categories. For example, the regulation should have criteria limits that support the goals of all state agencies in lockstep coordination. The pollution limits should support the state's GHG roadmap, the state's ozone reduction plan, the state's water goals. Emission limits for permitting oil and gas wells should include all sources, not just oil and gas impacts over time. Similar limits for oil and gas pollutants should be made for water use and quality, land use and reclamation standards, public health and safety standards, wildlife protections, etc. Please move forward with the rulemaking. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Bjork. Very much appreciate your comments. Thank you for being here today. Next, we have Doug Henderson, who will be followed by Faith Agarwal.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Can you hear me?
We sure can, Mr. Henderson. Please go ahead.
I'm a Larimer County resident and member of the Larimer Alliance for Health, Safety, and Environment, a coalition representing thousands of people in this county. Our air quality in Larimer County is simply terrible. It's due largely to oil and gas emissions. The American Lung Association gives our air quality a grade of F. 3 years ago, Fort Collins ranked number 24 for worst ozone pollution in the US. Now it is ranked number 18. Our air quality is getting worse due to oil and gas emissions. You know these emissions harm people's health and environment. You know about the science confirming these impacts. You know that fracking uses over 10 billion gallons of fresh water in Colorado every year, turning it into toxic waste. You know that impacts are local, regional, and global, causing a wide range of harms from damaging prenatal health to exacerbating climate change. And you know that many impacts are cumulative. Senate Bill 181 requires the Commission to seriously consider cumulative impacts in its decisions, but so far it has failed to do so, while ignoring and understating harm to health, safety, and welfare, and to our environment and climate. Several years ago, I spoke to this commission about the critical role of people with authority to either stop harm or to condone harm and to thereby enable it. We are all aware of tragedies where officials ignored or denied evidence of wrongful conduct and harm when they could have acted to stop it. And by their own choice, each became an enabler of harm and each bore responsibility for the damage done. We've seen it in churches and schools and policing and institutions of justice and in agencies responsible for natural resources. Here in Colorado, for decades, oil and gas operators have caused harm to health, safety, and our environment with general impunity. Senate Bill 181 was intended as a turning point for COGCC to start protecting public health, safety, welfare, and environment. Commissioners, your legacy has yet to be fully written. Will you enable harm from cumulative impacts to go on unabated? Or will your legacy be protecting the public interest and welfare and our environment and climate? We want you to first and foremost uphold the intent of Senate Bill 181 regarding cumulative impacts. Ensure that your cumulative impacts task force truly represents impacted communities and incorporates the latest health and environmental science. Use EPA standards without creating compliance loopholes. Deny applications that will contribute to unhealthy pollution levels and until our air is no longer classified severe ozone non-attainment. Require operations to cease emitting ozone precursors on high pollution days with accurate monitoring and meaningful enforcement. Penalize inaccurate emissions projections and inaccurate reporting. Require operators to plug and abandon old wells before permitting a new well. Require fracking operations to use recycled water and place a limit and fee on the use of fresh water. Thank you for hearing those of us in Larimer County.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Next, we'll hear from Faith Agarwal.
Can I get it?
Yep, we can sure see you and we can hear you. Thank you, Ms. Agarwal. Please continue when you're ready.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, no, I've just done about a week's worth of research, so bear with me with my comment. Okay, so from my research, I think it would be really good for you to read the Clearing the Air, the Real Costs and Benefits of Oil and Gas for Colorado, and collaborate with the Colorado Fiscal Institute. It came out January 2023, has a lot of really good data. From what I've briefly seen, please get an expert scientific panel and place someone in position who's knowledgeable in air quality controls and will set and hold accountable oil and gas to public health and safety standards. It's not the public's job to plead for protection, but for my children, I'll beg you, and I'm begging you to protect my children. I just had a 3-month-old, and I'm just going to talk about air quality. Some things I've found in my quick research, if you didn't know, Front Range, well, now that you do, it's non-attainment for air quality and ozone. The federal government seems like it's stepping in. The solution for Coloradans to buy more expensive, quote unquote, clean gas during the summer. Yep, that's gas that's already causing the poor air quality. SB 19181, I have lots of references. Section 325-7-109, Section 2C, page 3. Communities have to run their own 60+ air quality monitoring systems. And when above the WHO or federal limits, these pads should be shut down. Baseline air quality reporting of every new site, pre-production, drilling and completion of ozone paid by the operator, Section 4, 29-20-104, Section 6, Section 2, 25-7-109, Part C, methane monitor. You already covered the ozone pollution reduction, but the SIP plan was dropped when they discovered by Met Sura that they underestimated the emissions from the oil and gas operations. Boulder has to increase their own setbacks to increase their safety because they're insufficient. That's 29-29-1041, land use and 2 location. 34-60-103A, avoid impacts from oil and gas operations. This should be standard around for all locations. Larimer County has to buy their own infrared leak cameras, which I have to assume there are none required by the COGCC, section 225-7-109. Part A is leak detection. From this small set of examples, it shows me that someone's dropped the ball and citizens have to look out for their own health and welfare. This is all under the COGCC purview. This is my real fear as the toxic tags go near 2 elementary schools where my 3 small children are going to grow up. In your cumulative impact report, please include citizens, headaches, nosebleeds, cancers, low-term births, loud noise, and asthma with their address and how they are being handled by the COGCC. Section 429-20-104, sections 4 and 6, 5 and 6. Please don't file this away and instead use this to fully hold Colorado accountable for the air quality and follow your mission as it stands, using these articles in SB 19-181 as your tool guide. Thank you, and sorry for going over.
That's okay. Thank you for being cognizant of the time, Ms. Agarwal. I appreciate that very much. Thank you for your comments. Okay, next we have Kelsey Barnholt. Following Kelsey, we'll try to get John Jenkins in.
Kelsey does not seem to be in the meeting at this moment.
Okay, we'll see if we can circle back there as well. We'll keep an eye out for her. Mr. Jenkins, is he there?
He is. I just promoted him to panelist.
I'm not seeing him just yet. You may, Mr. Jenkins, you may have to accept on your end.
I've initiated a few panelist requests. Still, he's not accepting the panelist request, Commissioner Ackerman.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hickam, would you mind sending a direct message to him that he'll need to accept, and we'll try him again in a little bit. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, next we'll hear from Heidi Leithwood, please. Hello, Ms. Leithwood, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry about that. I was muted.
We can hear you now. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, commissioners, and thank you for holding this stakeholder input session. I'm Heidi Leithwood, Climate Policy Analyst for 350 Colorado. Our group was a co-petitioner in the request for rulemaking petition that you heard in December. We're a grassroots movement with 20,000 members statewide working towards solutions for the climate crisis. Thank you for acknowledging during the December petition hearing the overwhelming public engagement on the topic of cumulative impacts. I believe it was around 120 public comments submitted into the docket. And I ask that you enter those comments into the record for these scoping hearings and into your consideration, since they show how important this issue is to the public, and many of those comments contain mention of specific cumulative impacts. I also ask that you include in the scope all of the cumulative impacts we brought up in the petition, which included air impacts and impacts on disproportionately impacted communities. Though I was disappointed at your ruling on our petition, through the current process, you now have the chance to make the scope much more comprehensive than the list we focused on in the petition. One thing our petition asked is that you define cumulative impacts using either the federal statute in the Code of Regulations or the EPA definition in NEPA. These definitions are clear that the cumulative impacts of oil and gas would be not only how the pollution from oil and gas builds up, but how it adds to all the other sources of pollution. Our Colorado Environmental Justice Task Force created recommendations on cumulative impacts too. And along with those federal definitions, these task force recommendations are also necessary as you determine the scope. As our petition did, today I want to focus on the impacts of air pollution, but I want to be clear that the petition asked you to consider not only ozone precursors, but also NACs, HAPs, any other toxic pollution, and greenhouse gases. In fact, in the petition, there was a huge appendix on climate change as a cumulative impact, which I personally wrote. And today I'm here to ask again that you determine how the COGCC can help address climate change. Climate change is the existential crisis of our time, and we should all be doing our part. Individual contributions pale in comparison to the power the Commission has to make a real impact. Though it is the CDPHE's purview to determine how much each source can pollute, Given the nature of cumulative impacts, it all adds up, and CDPHE has no control over the number of wells that are permitted in the first place. This logic applies not only to greenhouse gases, but also to hazardous air pollutants, ozone precursor emissions, and other pollutants of air, soil, and water. If an area is already polluted, each new oil and gas well that is permitted will incrementally raise the pollution. And new wells should not be allowed if they will increase pollution at all in DI communities, or if they will lead to unhealthy levels of HAPs or NACs in a community. The CDPHE has no control over wells get permitted. They can only say how much pollution each well can emit. Please use your full authority to do your part. And sorry, I see I went over time, but thank you for listening.
Just barely. Thank you so much, Ms. Leithwood. Thank you for being here. And thank you so much for your considerable work on the petition as well. I appreciate you being here with us today. Next, we'll hear from Edward Behan, followed by Weston Wilson. Mr.
Thank
Behan,
you. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you and see you. Please go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Ed Behan. I am the Media and Outreach Liaison with the Larimer Alliance for Health, Safety, and the Environment, and I reside in Fort Collins. The Larimer Alliance has advocated at both the local and state level for improved regulation of oil and gas operations in Colorado since the passage of Senate Bill 19181. We're also one of a group of 6 environmental organizations that submitted a petition to you last August calling for rulemaking on the cumulative impacts of this industry on our state's air quality. There are others here who will address the whys and wherefores of why such rulemaking is necessary. From my own personal perspective, such impacts go beyond just air quality. I have concerns, among other things, about the ridiculously large amounts of water that unconventional oil and gas drilling, also known as fracking, takes out of our already critically drought-stricken drainages. Many others can detail with more eloquence than me the impacts on public health, impacts on wildlife habitats, impacts on marginalized communities, and even impacts on property values near such operations. But what I want to address is the nature of the working group you proposed to establish last December to work on cumulative impact rulemaking. At the time, Director Robbins indicated he thought that work could be completed in the first quarter of 2023. 1 month has expired of that first quarter, so I ask, when will the group be set up? How will it be staffed? And do you honestly think it can complete the process in the remaining 2 months of this first quarter? It is my understanding that these listening sessions are to help establish the parameters of such a working group, so I propose you move carefully in setting it up. I know the oil and gas industry, as a stakeholder, will have representation in such a body. You should also include representatives of local governments and communities, both rural and urban. Academic and professional experts should be impaneled who can address the health and environmental impacts that have been brought to your attention. And you should surely include representatives of environmental advocacy organizations. Any such group should also hold public hearings with opportunities for citizen comment. And I think it should also be given a good deal more time to effectively address the questions of what regulations are appropriate and what effective enforcement would look like. Anything less than this would not be what I consider a transparent and good faith effort. The people and environment of our beloved state deserve a sincere and comprehensive process to address this critical issue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I hope you will give this serious consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Behan. Appreciate you being here and appreciate your testimony and work on the petition as it was presented as well. Next, we will hear from Weston Wilson, followed by Marie Venner.
Mr. Ackerman, neither of those people are in the meeting at the moment.
Okay, thank you. We will circle back at the end and see if they do join us. So next on our list is Natasha Legger, followed by Amy Petre-Hill.
I will put Amy in. Natasha is also not in the meeting at the moment.
Hey, Ms. Petre-Hill, I'm sure I'm not saying that right, but we can see you and looks like we can
You
hear
are. Thank you. Good afternoon, COGCC commissioners. My name is Amy Petre-Hill. I live in Aurora, Colorado. And 4 months ago, I buried my stepfather. The official cause of his death was cancer caused by exposure to Agent Orange in the Vietnam War. But the truth is that he suffered and died because of cumulative exposures to toxins and air pollution, like ozone, in Vietnam, and then here at home. Disabled veterans of all services and civilians with disabilities are disproportionately harmed by air pollution in the Front Range. And our area is severely out of compliance with the federal ozone national ambient air quality levels. As a minister focused on serving people with disabilities and volunteering with the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, I see the impact ozone, particulates, and other pollutants from oil and gas production have on the well-being of individuals particularly vulnerable to that pollution. And this isn't just anecdotal. A 2019 study in the American Journal of Respiratory Critical Care Medicine found that long-term exposure to ozone was significantly associated with deaths related to heart and lung illnesses and disabilities. For example, Colorado children and adults with cerebral palsy, a congenital myopathy causing problems with tone and contraction of skeletal muscles that can make breathing hard, can be significantly impacted by increased air pollution and ozone. This impact is further magnified by systemic barriers to accessing appropriate healthcare for people with disabilities, including veterans. Such barriers acutely impact Indigenous communities and communities of color, as according to a 2020 CDC study, 34% of Indigenous Coloradans live with a disability under the ADA, and 26.5% of our Hispanic family, friends, and neighbors live with disabilities, as compared with only 17.2% of those Coloradans who identify as white. My stepfather died a painful and preventable death arising from exposure to toxins and pollution, but you are in a position to save lives and present ongoing harm to those of us with disabilities and specific vulnerabilities to ozone and air pollution. Please create stringent rules and health and environmental standards that address the cumulative impacts of air pollution on communities of color and those with disabilities, particularly for negotiating permits and denying permits that are not adequately protective of public health. Thank you for your time and attention.
And thank you, Ms. Petray-Hill. I appreciate you being here and sharing your story with us today. Thank you very much. Let's see, next we'll hear from Victoria Mars, followed by Cesar Holgen. All right, Ms. Mars, we can see you, and it looks like you're off mute, so please, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the Commission today to identify the cumulative impacts I think are critical to preserving and hopefully improving the public health, safety, and welfare of Colorado citizens, as well as the protection of wildlife, resources, and the environment. I've been a resident in Arapahoe County in Colorado for more than 18 years, which is about a third of my life, during which time I have raised 3 children and now have a granddaughter to cherish. My concerns over the detrimental impacts fracking can have on the environment are many and cumulative. As fracking has become more common in Colorado over the last 15 plus years, evidence of its deleterious impact on quality of life in the state has been well documented, hence the passing of Senate Bill 19-181 to address these issues. First issue I'd like to address is the production of methane during the fracking process and the release of nitrogen oxide, benzene, hydrogen sulfide, and other hydrocarbons that lead to increased smog and ozone pollution. Also, clean water is of great concern. The amount of water needed for the fracking process and contaminated by it are unsustainable, especially given water is very limited in our semi-arid environment in which we often find ourselves in drought conditions. Thirdly, contamination of soil and surface water, given the increasing number of spills and accidental release during transportation. Another point is the damaging health effects the toxins used and released into our environment have on human health. Especially at risk are our children, the elderly, and those with chronic health conditions. I also like to address the placement of oil and gas production in close proximity to both established and growing neighborhoods near reservoirs and watersheds, which puts the importance of our health and well-being far beneath the profits of the industry. And lastly, I also ask that you please take a look at the cumulative impacts on loss of plant and wildlife habitats. In addition to the toxins in the environment, noise and light pollution can lead to migratory disruptions and hasten further species decline. Again, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Ms. Mars. I very much appreciate you being here and for your comments. Thank you. Okay, next we'll hear from Cesar Holgen, followed by Candace McNear.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Yep, please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm Cesar Holguin. I've lived in Colorado and worked in the oil field for over 15 years. Myself, as well as others, support ourselves and our families off of the oil and gas industry. I've worked on pipelines, tank batteries. I've seen everything that goes on out there. So I see that much precaution is being taken out there, especially on pipelines where oil and gas is delivered. I'm one who works out there, so I see everything that goes on in the field. If I myself thought something was wrong, I would definitely let it be known. The thousands of jobs that will be impacted is a reason why anyone should think twice about trying to shut down the oil and gas industry, not to mention the economy alone. Colorado is the cleanest oil and gas supplier that exists, so we should take advantage of that and produce here instead of polluting other states or the United States. If you have that, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Holguin, and thank you for being here. Appreciate your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from Candace McNear, followed by Shannon Erdman. Okay, Ms. McNear, it looks like you've joined the meeting. Can you hear us? If you can hear us, we can't hear you. Okay, we've got you on video now, Ms. McNear, but we can't hear you. You'll have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead.
Dear COGCC commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Candace McNear, and I'm a fourth generation Coloradoan, and my husband, Tim, is a fifth generation Coloradoan. We have 3 children, and we've lived in Colorado our whole lives. We own a casing company in Greeley, which employs 15 to 20 men. We have been in the oil and gas service industry for 12 years. The benefits of oil and gas are numerous. The drilling companies we work for require safe land training, tons of regulations for all drilling companies. We have strict regulations for noise pollution and overall compliance with all current regulations, including air quality. I also want clean air, clean water. Colorado has the highest standards in the world for clean air and clean water. We follow strict guidelines to stay in business. We can't survive day to day without oil and gas unless we stop driving, stop heating our homes, etc. Or maybe we should stop the huge population control that has happened in the state of Colorado, which also affects the number of cars that are on our roads, which highly affects the air and water quality. But I'm not quite sure that we can just stop people from moving into Colorado. I really do oppose this issue as it will shut many small oil and gas companies down. You should want to produce the cleanest oil and gas here. If you are not producing it here and looking at the whole scope, then maybe we will get our oil and gas from Venezuela or Saudi Arabia or someplace where they have absolutely no oil and gas regulations. I think this should be affected worldwide, not just in the state of Colorado. We need to realize that this will affect all citizens. Please do not put cumulative impacts in place unless we place cumulative impacts worldwide, as Colorado has placed many regulations here already. So if we replace our oil and gas, where are we going to get it? Do we just shut down all transportation? How do we plan on doing this for the future? As a Colorado citizen and small business owner, I think this is a very bad and grave decision. Also, depending on how much you stop oil and gas regulation, it's a huge tax base for the citizens of Colorado that will also affect our tax base, which will mean property values will skyrocket for property taxes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McNear, for being here and for your comments today. Appreciate those very much. Next, we'll hear from Shannon Erdman, followed by, I have Paul Varutsos, which might be a typo because I believe he testified before, but if he's here, he will follow Ms. Erdman. Okay, I see Shannon
Hi.
Erdman has joined. Oh, it
Can
sounds
you
like
hear me?
we sure can hear you. We can't see you, and that's okay. If you just want to leave your audio on, we can hear you. So please go ahead.
Perfect. Hi, thank you for letting me speak with you today. My name is Shannon Erdman. I'm a fourth generation Coloradan, mother of 3 girls, grandmother of 8 girls and 1 boy. My roots are deep here in Colorado, from my ancestors that came to Colorado and homesteaded on the Eastern Plains to my grandchildren who are the 5th generation Coloradans. I always have wanted to live in Colorado because we have all 4 seasons. We have so many blessings that it's just amazing. We have an impressive list of state and national parks, and taking a weekend drive is always a favorite thing to do. It used to be one of the best places to start a family or retire to because the costs were actually pretty good for, the average of a big city. Colorado does an excellent job with all the gas and oil production that they do and are considered the best in the world for developing clean energy and the production. We will be increasing emissions if we don't maintain oil and gas production just here in Colorado, because we will have to get it from other places. I mean, we can't just go to battery powered without the use of oil and gas. The Middle East does not produce oil and gas in a safe and clean manner that Colorado does. What impact studies have been done? What return of investment studies have been done? Unfortunately, I haven't seen any of those. It is unfortunate because I have to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet now. I plan to retire at 67, but that's just not going to be possible. With the rising inflation, rising costs of everything, it's just got a great impact on my life and my children's and grandchildren's lives. It's worse for the youth just starting out in Colorado. My family are not alone in this predicament. Every family, whether starting out or retiring, are really having to question if they can afford Colorado. The average cost of a 1-bedroom apartment is over $1,000 per month. We simply cannot afford to make everything more expensive when we don't know what the true return of investment will be. Colorado has always been very conscientious about our environment and the safety of our Colorado lifestyle. Oil and gas production is absolutely critical to the delicate fiscal balance in our beautiful state. Oil and natural gas benefits Colorado energy's industry. It contributes billions to our state's economies and supports hundreds of thousands of reliable, good jobs. I am one of those recipients. My second job is in the oil and gas industry, and without it, I might have to rely on public assistance. Like all of you, I want a safe and healthy state, but we simply have to be guided by common sense and a balance of what it must take to ensure the state's longevity for generations to come. I urge you to follow the heart of true Coloradans that value conservation, the environment, and our way of life. I urge you to consider the impact of the proposal that's in place. We have the most beautiful, impactful environmental policies in place in the world and need to expound on them as opposed to reducing or trying to eliminate it solely in Colorado. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Erdman. We appreciate you being here and appreciate your comments today. Next on our list, we have Paul Varutsos. As I mentioned, I think we heard from Mr. Varutsos before, but let's see if he's there. Following Mr. Varutsos will be Janet Jewell.
Yeah, hi, this is Paul. I did give a statement on the first session. Are we allowed to give multiple statements, or is that not okay?
We will listen to you, Paul. We have asked people to testify just at one meeting, but if you've got some follow-up thoughts, we certainly will listen to them.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, and I apologize, I was not aware. But yeah, my name is Paul, and I'm here today as a concerned citizen of the city of Aurora and county of Arapahoe. Many people in this area are concerned about the cumulative impacts of planned oil and gas operations around Aurora Reservoir in East Aurora. Yeah, it was very clear at the Ward 6 Town Hall meeting yesterday that the residents of this area do not want oil and gas operations so close to our water supply, schools, and homes. I am absolutely confused as to why planned operations are allowed to be so close to Aurora Reservoir and our homes. There are literally 25,000 acres in unincorporated Arapahoe County, and yet why must we place these wells within just a couple thousand feet of our water supply and homes? I just don't understand it. Yesterday, a representative from Aurora Water stated that there was one planned well that they had concerns about and were planning on requesting it be moved farther from Aurora Reservoir. But he also stated that it would not be moved beyond the distance of 1 mile. I find this very suspect, as there are many studies, which I do not have time to list now, that support evidence of negative consequences to water supplies and residents within 1 mile of oil and gas operations. I would like to request that Arapahoe County and the COGCC deny permits within 1 mile of reservoirs or homes. If you are going to allow any well permits to move forward, I hope that you engage with the nearby communities and come to a compromise to move these wells to safe distances. The distance decided should be based not on discussions between the COGCC and operators, but with community members and peer-reviewed scientific data. I would like to request that the COGCC perform or outsource to a neutral third party to study the effects of oil and gas operations on local communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vroutsos. We appreciate your follow-up comments. Next, we'll hear from Janet Jewell, followed by David Jewell. Okay, Ms. Jewell, it looks like you're on the panel. We can't see you, and it looks like you are muted.
Start. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
My name
is just fine now. Please go ahead.
Okay. As you know, my name is Janet Jewell, and I am a longtime resident of Larimer County and the state of Colorado for over 60 years. Today, I'm wanting to talk to you about a lot of different ideas that have come to me, but mainly the reason I'm so involved and taking such an interest in these various commissions and what's happening is that I know that there are stringent regulations, and I know that we have some of the strictest. And I think your commission should take pride in the fact that we do have these strong regulations for the oil and gas industry. I commend you for that. I commend you for these hearings because it is important for us to have public comment times, and I'm grateful that I can speak today to that point. I'm being involved in watching what is happening because of my children and grandchildren. I want this state to be the state I grew up in too. But I'm also concerned with what's going to happen for their schools. They go to some of the best schools. But, you know, if we don't get funding from the tax revenue that the oil and gas industry provides, our districts will have a tough time coming up with that money. We go to parks and playgrounds around the state and even locally here, and we love that opportunity. Well, that money has come to furnish from some of the tax revenues that also come from the oil and gas. So I'm very grateful for those things, and I'm grateful that these children can grow up with those opportunities. But I don't also like the way the price increases are going up for our gas. And all of us have to heat our homes. All of us have to afford utility bills right now. And these increases are just going to go up if we keep putting the oil and gas industry with these stricter regulations or stricter controls that they've been meeting those already. And they have the opportunity to show people this. I mean, if these people would like to go and take tours, I'm sure that they could learn a lot of what the oil and gas companies are doing in our state right now. This concern is not just for me, my kids, my family, my grandkids, but it's all the families in this state. And we're all feeling this pinch because of the rising prices and everything. Your commission has a capability to go forward and to look at all of this. And I know you will make the right decisions regarding our state, regarding the oil and gas industry and their needs, as far as what we're going to continue to do to make sure that we have a strong economy in Colorado, which the oil and gas industry does contribute to. Thank you for your time today.
And thank you, Ms. Jewell. We appreciate you being here and appreciate your comments. Thanks so much. Next, we have Mr. David Jewell. And David, are you on separately, or will you be using, I'm going to be presumptuous and ask if you might be using Janet's screen. Oh, it looks like he's joining separate.
Yes, sorry, I just had to rejoin.
No worries. We hear you just fine. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is David Jewell, an independent businessman from Northern Colorado. First, I want to thank the Commission for the opportunity to speak to you today and ask that you consider the impact of your decisions on what has been a fabulous period in our state and region. Our family is fifth generation living, working, and enjoying the wonderful Rocky Mountain region. My business has been working with and building relationships with businesses, communities, government entities, and individuals over the last 50 years. In addition, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other businesses like mine that have worked for many generations doing similar work. Your decisions will affect these and future generations. This has been the economic vitality of our state and region. In regarding to adding more restrictive regulations to the air quality rules, I would like to share my view of why more regulations are not necessary. When my parents were born around the beginning of the 20th century, the life expectancy was 50 for women and just under that for men. About that time, the oil and petroleum industry was beginning to have its effects on our lifestyle, which have been fabulous. My parents lived into their 80s and 90s. What was going on that added to their longevity? This was a period during which we had 2 world wars, the Great Depression, but also tremendous innovations of tens of thousands of products created due to the discovery and development of petroleum. These includes medical, industrial, and consumer products. As society evolves, so do products, and we will adapt to whatever comes into our experience. And the practice, we will adapt to our lifestyle and needs we will continue to see today. Our energy sources now are cleaner and more effective through innovation. We are enjoying a lifestyle that earlier generations could only dream about. I am very optimistic about our future prospects for our region and the work being done to support the economic vitality and livability as we adapt to needed changes. For this and many other reasons, I ask that this commission look at all the facts in regard to the increase in regulations that affect the lifestyle of our region and all its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. Appreciate your thoughts there, and thank you for being with us today.
You bet.
Okay, next on our list is Harmony Cummings. All right, Ms. Cummings, we can see you, and it looks like you're off mute. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Perfect. At a time when there is lack of trust in the government, please make things more transparent. Navigating the COGCC website is cumbersome and not transparent. There should be a cumulative impacts page on your website that shows how many wells have been approved each year, the number of OGPs, TAPs, and the number of abandoned wells, how much water has been used, how much produced water, and what chemicals have been found in it, how many injection wells, how many of those are old wells, how many of those are wells are of concern, how many spills, accidents, violations, how many leaks, the emissions, the VOCs, the type, and the quantity. The CDPHE environmental complaint system is in place. What about complaints to the agency? Can we also add the new CDPHE environmental complaint system so we can see all these things in one place? All easy to read, all simple, easy to navigate for the public and for the commission and for all other departments involved. In addition, there should be maps on your pages that show where all the wells are, injection wells for produced water, and this should be layered with information from EnviroScreen that shows DI communities, legacy pollution, other pollution source, so we can see the layering effect that we're having. A lot of this information has already been done with CDPHE, so it should be easy to incorporate this across departments. At what point do we look at the 5,600 wells permitted during this administration and over the 50,000 wells that we have statewide? And when do we look at the implications of all this mass quantity? Are these numbers even accurate? I don't know. These numbers are really hard to find through the system, track and calculate. Again, this should be information that's easily disclosed and able to be found by the public, not for the public to have to calculate. This should be something presented from COGCC, also for abandoned wells in addition. I want this information easy for me and for you and for all decision makers involved. How are our numbers so off from your numbers? I was an accountant for oil and gas companies for 8 years. I know firsthand that you can cherry pick, omit, and manipulate the data to tell the story you want it to, or to tell the story you want to hide. Ozone, we are in severe non-attainment, meaning our health is in danger. We have a plan that does not bring us to attainment, and I hear the EPA is going to lower the standards to be within even more what's needed health practices. Oil and gas is emitting twice as much than previously thought, and we're going to just continue approving more and more permits in a time of non-attainment and a plan that doesn't get us to attainment, in which health benefits or our health criteria is getting lower, but we're going to continue doing more permits with more ozone violations. This doesn't make sense to me, and I would love for someone from the commission to reach out to me to explain this further of how this is supposed to work and that new permitting won't cause greater detriment to our ozone. There was a mandated shift to protecting health and environment through SB 181. What has been done to change this paradigm and culture within the COGCC? What restructuring and staffing and resources have taken place? I want to see a breakout of the COGCC staff. What is allocated to people working on permits? How many is allocated to people working on environment and inspections? And how many staff are dedicated to violations and spills? There are vast differences between spills and violations reported by various operators. Do you think this is a reflection of what's actually happening? Or do you think that there's a lack of reporting because they know that the agency is so short-staffed that they will probably get away with it? If you have to stop and pause for that answer, you need more inspectors. Again, we want to see a staffing breakout to see where the COGCC's priorities lie.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. You can wrap up pretty quickly. You are
perfect. I'll just say that we would like easy to see one page with the impact on ozone, emissions, wildlife, proximity to legacy pollution. I also want to see production numbers and the number of product that goes out of the state, because as we use up our water resources and we pollute our air, how much of that benefits Colorado? Because we are paying the price for that in so many ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Thank you for being here with us today. And Ms. Amaro, I believe, has circled back to see if we can wrap anybody in that we were unable to get earlier. Believe that Mr. Jenkins might be with us. Other than that, I think the others have not joined us. Can you verify whether that's correct, Ms. Amaro?
That is correct, Commissioner Ackerman. The rest are not in the meeting, and I've gone a few times to check.
Okay, great. Let's see if we can elevate Mr. Jenkins successfully.
Yes.
It's possible that he still won't be available. I've been in touch with somebody that he works with, and I think that he still may be at a call. So if he doesn't come on, that's why.
Okay, we'll give him a shot and see. Thank you, Ms. Hickam.
Commissioner Ackerman, I've promoted him a few times and he's not accepted as of yet.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Appreciate all your help. And again, appreciate all the comments that have been offered here today. Clearly, this is an issue that people are interested in and is near and dear to their hearts. We heard a lot of testimony today and some emotional testimony. We appreciate your involvement and thoughts on this issue, which does impact all of us. I wanted to thank everybody for your preparation today and for your minding of the clock as you gave your comments. I appreciate that very much. It's a good reminder that cumulative impacts do mean a lot of different things to different people. And the intent of these meetings, as we continue to talk about it and hear from the public, is to help us get our heads around where you are as the public on this issue. We do have one more listening session scheduled for next Monday, the 6th of February at 10 a.m. in the same format. And as we alluded to earlier in this meeting, our path forward is to assess the issues that are raised for inclusion and have been thus far. We intend to refine the next steps once we get our arms around the issues that have been submitted. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not prejudging the outcome of this process and what the results might look like. And as I mentioned in previous meetings, they may be rulemaking, they may be policies, they may be forms, administrative procedures, etc. Our intent here is to begin broadly and to become increasingly focused into actionable items as we narrow down the recommendations that do fit within the purpose of the process, and to ultimately make recommendations to the Commission on how to assess and address cumulative impacts. I do want to encourage further written comments, any verbal comments at our meeting on Monday. And remember that the form that's listed on our website under the cumulative impacts page can be used to sign up for potential further participation in this stakeholder process. And that written comment form will officially close at the close of business on February 24th. And as a reminder, we heard a lot of great comments today, and there are other issues that are ongoing that may or may not be related to cumulative impacts, but may be more pointed towards specific caps for oil and gas developments. We certainly invite your comments in those applicable processes as well. So with that, I wanted to pause for just one moment and give anyone on our panel a chance to ask any questions, make any clarifications that they would like, or if you're good with having listened to what we've listened to today. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close our meeting. Thank you again for being here, and we will see you and others that are signed up on the 6th next Monday. Thanks so much.